good. Happy Tuesday to everybody. Hey, Rodney, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm peachy. I'm a little sweaty. We just got big news and we don't know what that means yet. So we'll cover that
Yes,
in a
we
minute.
did.
So that's like, what now? So fill me in. Did you have a good weekend? I always ask you that question. You go golfing? Did you have a good weekend?
I did. Played a little golf and just had a good time. No, kind of relaxing weekend. Watched my Vols win, my Niners lose, but it's all good. All good.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm gonna focus everything because invariably I get calls. We're doing this. That's when the calls come in. So, there's a lot going. There is a lot going on, and I bet you're probably overloaded with information, aren't you?
It's I don't know what to think about this. Honestly, I don't know what to think. I may be a loss for words for the first time.
That's yeah. We'll work past that. So, for anybody that's new here, welcome. And for anybody that's been here before, watching replay, welcome back. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee. I'm with Rodney, my best friend. He's a lender here in Williamson County with First Trust. Our goal here, hey Angie, good morning. She's back. And the reason that we're doing this is just to kind of have a conversation about topics. Do we answer the questions of the world? Probably not. But you know what? There's a lot of interesting things to talk about. And if you have questions or concerns, or if you'd like to learn more about real estate in general or specifically to Williamson County, our contact information will be in the comments below for Rodney and myself. We can answer a lot of questions. Generally, if it's specific, we can probably help for a little ways down the road on that too. So anyway, don't be shy. Reach out, say hi. We'd love to talk to you. There we go. I need to shorten that up someplace.
It's good.
So today, what I wanted to touch base with, and my eyes are going to be flicking around a lot because, to be honest, sometimes things. This is a big day for us real estate people. Now, I don't mean to say that anything is, if you're selling your house or buying your house, that doesn't mean that the world's cracking and falling apart. You're not going to see any changes. You're not, if you're in that, and probably it's going to be a while. However, what happened today, we're talking about that court case. We'll get to that in a minute. That did come down today. And so there's going to be a lot of conversations about that. But if you're in the middle of the process, don't worry. You'll be unaffected at this point. But it's worth a conversation. Is that fair?
Yes.
So today it's our favorite week, Rodney. It's Fed week.
That's it.
And I think we agreed on our bet. We don't, hey, if anybody's watching, we don't bet money or anything. We bet chickens. I think we agreed on the bet that there would be no rate hike, right?
I believe that was a consensus.
Yeah,
that was 2 for 2.
For both of us, consensus, we agree. And so based on what you know and how much we've kind of covered this topic, not from a strictly economics standpoint, but what do you think? Now we've already agreed they're not going to raise, but why do you think that that's the case?
Well, I guess the biggest thing is I think they've gotten the inflation is, I don't want to say under control, but getting closer to where they want it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they've been, to me, trying to do this whole time, is lower inflation and correct our housing market. I mean, they've said that they want to correct that housing market over a year ago. So they've just been pouring in on these rates until it's happened, which it's, I think we're definitely seeing it now, and probably going into the winter, it may even, who knows? As soon as I say that, it'll probably start spiking up in sales or something.
Yeah. And I'm gonna do this just to kind of be a teaser. Will this be a good day for the sellers? I'll let you know. That comes later in the show, so stick around. I looked up I agree with you, Rodney. The one thing, what are they trying to do? They're trying to keep inflation down, right? And so I looked up the recent report on the recent inflation report, and what came up was this: it was 3.7 for the 12 months ending in September 23, which is recent. The consumer price index for urban consumers increased 0.4%, that's pretty reasonable. It rose, but 3.7 over the last 12 months, and that's what they're watching. They're trying to get to 2%, I think, is probably the thing. And then not seasonally adjusted, but the core inflation, which they talk about that, and I believe that's without fuel and food. Core inflation is without those two. Yes, food and energy. Yeah, it was up 0.3 on a monthly basis, so 4.1 a year ago. The reason, that's better than 9. That's where we were, 6 months ago? It was like, holy mackerel. And I think that the reason that they're going to not jack it up a quarter of a point at most, and the reason I believe that is that I think that they figured out that after they make adjustments, there's a tail off. There's an effect after they make that adjustment, and they got to wait. And Rodney, you were really strong about that. They don't wait long enough to see what their adjustment effects are.
Yeah, when they raise them month after month, how many ever that was consecutive.
Yeah, 11.
To me, I just don't see how that's enough time to give their policies time enough to take in effect. But also, and I forget the guy's name. You'd think we'd remember it by now, but it was the guy that they named it after the guy in like the Jimmy Carter era, like 76, where he didn't curb inflation, and it went for another 5 or 10 years or whatever.
Was that Volkner?
Something. So it's kind of like, well, we're not going to do what he did. Raise it a little bit or whatever they did to fight it at that time. But it definitely drug on. And I think that's something that our history books will never relive. And everybody from then forward just, overcorrects, if you will.
Paul Volcker. I bet that's it. And I did not Google that. That was organic, man.
That's pretty good, yeah. That's it's not good to have that named after you, though.
Right, Philip, how are you, buddy? And say hi to Wendy. And I tell you what, you'll notice that I have my Halloween costume on. It's scary, I know. Hey, yeah. I didn't have anything else set up for that. And we got no bullet points today, Rodney, so we're going to have to do this different. Here's what I got to think that occurs to me when they're talking about those rates. And it's based on consumers, the consumer activity. Well, it's going to be, what's the holiday coming up? Let me see, Thanksgiving, yeah, and then there's Christmas. And they say that spending has increased because we're up $1 trillion in consumer debt, which is a bunch. That's a lot of dollars. Yeah. And that's where a lot of this spending is coming from, How do you, and I'm asking because I don't know, but this is the stuff that occurs to me when I'm in the twilight zone. When you're trying to watch the consumer price index and you're coming into the spendiest time of the year, meaning Christmas, how do you account for that? And not make a bad judgment call based on it? Is that a reasonable question?
I don't know how they're going to. It's I bet America's spending increases a certain amount of percentage over these next few months anyways. So it's not like it's going to be last year we didn't spend and then this year it's just gone crazy. I think it's going to be more in line than like it has in the past, and it doesn't really. But retailers, you always hear this at the end of the year. It's like, okay, was it the death of the retailer again? This year it's going to. Every year it seems like start of the year we always hear the retail markets were down, but overall spending was up with online and things like that, right?
Right.
I think less and less people go to a mall or shopping center and spend money, and more people are doing it online there. So,
and that's where the battle tends to be, is between brick and mortar and online, because Amazon has done a really good job of, hey, I can get it tomorrow and be okay with it.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
Oftentimes when you think about it, like for me, it's like, if I think about it and order it on Amazon, I'm going to have it way before I have time to go get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know my nature that, and I think what we're talking about, what the conversation here is, consumer spending and how that happens. For me, if I want to save money, I'm better off buying what I intend to buy on Amazon rather than go to Best Buy. Because if I go to Best Buy, I'll be, oh, look at that,
Yeah.
I'll fall in love.
Yeah. You'll get, well, I mean, that's a good thing. Yeah, I guess that's the trick of retail. You go in there and you'll find your cables you didn't know you needed, and then whatever's at the checkout line, right?
$600 later on an impulse buy. Oops.
Yeah. I did want to jump back to this thing though. Did you see that in this the Fed rate article that some of the some economists are projecting that they start cutting rates by mid 2024?
Yes, and
so which is 7 months away. So we're it's like we're wondering if they're cutting right now. And then already they're projecting to start cutting by mid May. Could start cutting. You never know.
If they give a date, now this is just predictors. Okay, yeah, I'm reading it. Okay, and these are just people making that prediction. If somebody plants a flag and says it's March, then everybody in the world is going to wait for it. But I tell you, wouldn't that be, what do you think let's see. There's another article. The Federal Reserve may not hike interest rates next week, but consumers are unlikely to feel any relief. Talking about relief. When they start cutting rates, what do you think the first thing that's going to happen?
Well, I think our mortgage rates would start falling.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have to fall in line. So yeah, that's and that's their second big issue is the government. I think they're trying to work on affordability issues. So, but 2024 is like the earliest that you could start seeing some of that, I think.
Right. And I know that earlier this year, everybody, maybe including me, I don't want to use the word, was a little bit panicky when they were making predictions that this inflation thing was going to be a problem for a couple of years. Remember that in 22?
Mm-hmm.
They were saying it's going to be a problem for a couple of years. And there's a lot of people puckered up pretty seriously on that. It's like 2 years. That's a long time. Oh, golly, it's like tomorrow's November.
Now we're hoping it's 2 years.
Yeah, just that fast.
Yeah, it's just been a wild cycle with this, with so many such good rates for so long, and everybody's built up so much equity. We've talked about it a million times, but it's just like it's just hard for them to get out of that and go and flip their house and trade it for another house that they're paying top dollar for again, and the rates are high, and they're giving up their low one. So.
Yeah, I guess probably if there was a way to button up the conversation on the Federal Reserve, the Fed, singular.
The Fed.
When I look to the left, I'm looking at comments from Phil and Wendy because they helped me be better. if I were to try to sum that up, the Federal Reserve is not going to be the biggest news of the week
No,
when it comes to real estate. And I'll say
no,
again, don't expect big changes, but big news, yes.
yeah. No, correct. This our next topic is the news of the week.
We do okay. We want to jump right on that. Okay, I do have another question about break evens, but we'll get to this
No,
other
jump. Yeah,
thing.
we got time.
We do okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on. Be. There we go. Check your little red dot there, Rodney. Here's what now. This is something I'm a little. I'm just going to ask the question. You're the money guy. When to put a fine thing on it, the Federal Reserve, they're not going to do anything and nothing's going to change. It's going to be crummy for a while longer. That's if I would have finished it, that would be it. Can we agree to that?
Yeah, yeah. You could add in there as well that there's not very much relief coming fast either. With your credit card debt or any other debt too. So it's gonna it is where it is for a minute.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of settling into it, and that's I'll honest to God, I'll end it there. My next question is about break-even points when somebody buys a house. And I'm having a little difficulty, and I thought I had a handle on this, but I'm having difficulty if you pop open that link, Rodney.
Mm-hmm.
The math is confusing me, and I'm hoping that you can help me with that. The break-even point is where you buy a house, you go through all the expenditures, the closing costs, things like that. I expect it's not down payment. Would that be included in break-even?
Well, it actually should include that in there.
Okay.
I think my calculations have it in there.
Oh, okay. So the break-even point, the whole point is when you buy a house, how long do you have to be on the market and make payments before when you sell it a profit? And I suspect the profit means +1, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to be a particular amount. Here's what threw me off. And the reason I'm asking this is, and I actually had a person call me last night. I'm going to add this into the conversation. When we're talking about activity and the things that's been going on in the real estate market, their indicators, one of the indicators for lenders is how many applications are they getting, right? That's one of the things that's called a leading indicator. Not everybody's going to complete it, but if you get more applications, it means more people are interested. In the real estate business, I've had a pretty serious uptick of people reaching out going, hey, what do you think about this, and rates and prices? And so there's a lot going on. That generates this question. The question is the break even. Zillow had said, as it is, the break even can take up to 13 and a half years to break even on your purchase. Now that's an average, because in some cities, some places, it's going to be different, but on average, 13 and a half years seems like a heck of a long time. And when I was looking at this article, as a matter of fact, I've been doing this recently and I like the idea of it. Hang on. Because I think that works. Some of the math doesn't make sense in my head. A 3% down payment would require 13 years and 6 months to break even. A 5% would be less. A 20% down payment would require even less. How's the math on that work?
Well, it's think about it like this: is how if you put more down, then you can sell it faster. You could if you went and put 6% or 7% down right then, theoretically you should buy it and turn around and be able to sell it at a break even. Right?
Okay.
Because you've put enough money, your down payment would cover the fees it would take to sell it. Their real estate fees, closing costs, things like that.
Okay.
So So yeah, the larger the down payment, the faster you're going to break even, because all it's considering really is how fast can you sell this home without a loss.
And my math keeps coming up to what the original purchase price was, and that's not what they're calculating that on. It's the LTV in this example.
I'm not sure. Yeah. See, I would not calculate like this. I don't, with my service, I have a better way to calculate it that takes into consideration appreciation for your area.
Right.
Uh, it takes into consideration how much you're paying it down. It does
Right.
add in all the closing costs and things like that. But uh, this right here, I'm not I don't think that this is a good way to look at it at all, because
It doesn't make sense to me. That's why I'm
yeah,
asking.
and if you look, you kind of pick up on some things they say in the article about it's it's they're adding in 1%, I think, per month on cost of home ownership, like maintenance
Maintenance
fees and
costs.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got some things in there that's just it's just their formula is the best way I can explain it. But if I was looking at it, I would almost compare it next to your rent, because if you're paying, you've got to live somewhere. And if somebody's out paying $2,500 or $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month in rent, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's 100% interest.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, I don't
I'll have to.
like
I'll have
the
to. I have to think about that more, because that doesn't. When I was reading this article, and it just confused me, and I'm like, that isn't what I thought at all.
Yeah, like they're saying, okay, take this for an example. El Paso, Texas,
Yeah.
21 years and 4 months if you put 5% down.
Right.
Well, Andy, I mean, that's not even close, because your property value would have to decrease, the same, because you're putting 5% down, and let's say you can sell it for 7%, with your
Right.
fees. You only need 2%, right then.
Yeah.
So I
See,
don't know how it takes 21 years to get there,
I don't
but
either.
um, but either way, it's like I said, this is I mean, it's a fine. You can compare different areas because it's the same formula for every area. So
Right.
you could actually see, okay, well, San Jose, no matter if you agree with the numbers or not, but like San Jose, California is only 6 years and 11 months. So obviously they think it's appreciating faster than, say, your Cleveland, Ohio, that takes
Yeah. Right.
22 years and 10 months.
Yeah. Exactly. And you notice a lot of those, if not most, are in California. The fast growing ones. But on the flip side, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to do more research. It just caught my eye as
Yeah.
that didn't make sense,
It's
because the question that I get, or the question I had last night was, how fast are housing values going up, right? Because what people are trying to calculate is, if I sit another year, will my value go up like a skyrocket like it used to? And I'm
right.
saying it's not going to do that. And we've been through the prognostications with Zillow and all the rest of them.
Yeah.
They've been flip flopping all year, and I'm not blaming them. How do you?
Right.
Their best guess. But what's been showing is around 5%. In a
Yeah.
year, it's a 5% increase. You don't have to race to sell. There's no big hurry to be on that. And so people are asking, how much is it going to cost? And my advice, candidly, yesterday was, you could sell anytime you want. Just remember, it's going to cost you significantly more than it did a couple of years ago to get into your next place. So that's a whole new calculation. Unless you have to move, the recreational stuff is kind of out the window for a minute.
Yeah. But I got I like the figures where I can actually look at current appreciation models
Yes.
Year over year, I can put in the taxes, I can put in the sales price, the area, and it calculates for me against rent and things like that. It's like how soon do you break even? How soon do you start making money and things like that? It just gives you a reason. It's like, okay, well, should I wait? Should I have, should I pause? Should
Right.
I not buy this house today because I think the interest rates are higher,
Right. Right.
um,
Or
and all
or at
that?
least you can supply the information for an equation to be calculated in your head.
Right. And then
Yeah.
when you present it to somebody, they can see the actual numbers of the actual area and say, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to buy it or to stay away from it, either one. So
And I think what generated it. Sometimes when we're getting ready for the show, I'll have a real strong intention for what what I want to do on the show for any given Tuesday. But sometimes things just catch my eye, and that's what that break even thing was.
yeah,
And I'll bet, and I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not casting aspersions on anyone. It didn't make sense to me. It's not going to make a lot of sense to other people, I would think. And I'll bet. Here's my point. It's a wonderful thing to have someone like you, and this isn't I'm not promoing you, to have a person that has a calculation abilities like you do to tell me what the truth is. If I called you and said, what's the break even point for my house, you could tell me, as
yeah,
opposed
I
to
could,
be true.
yeah. I mean, we could, yeah. I mean, at least I could explain where the numbers come from, and you
Yeah.
could see some real world examples of it. Yes,
Yeah.
but it's these articles like this. Whether it's by Zillow or that
Whoever.
guy with the goofy tank top down in Florida. So,
Yeah.
the thing about, like, me and you can look at this objectively, but other people, if they're hoping to see that it's a bad time to buy, this is what they're going to see.
Confirmation bias. You got. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're looking for a reason to not buy, there you go.
Yes.
But honey, it'd take us nearly 14 years to pay off this house. You sure? That's what Zillow said.
Yeah, but yeah, it's yeah. I mean, if I'm a first time home buyer and I've been shut out of the market for the last couple years because of bids and things like that, I wouldn't let high rates stand in my way, or an article like this. I would definitely talk to a professional and run some good numbers for your area.
Run some good numbers. And that's why I brought it up. And I'm not embarrassed to say to the world, because that's what we're doing, that I'm not a finance guy. I'm good with numbers. I'm good with negotiations. I'm good with all of that. But I'm not an economics student. And things like that are the reason that I have people like much smarter than me, like Rodney, that I can call and say, what does this mean? Because, you guys
I
are
just say stuff with confidence, Andy. I don't really know a lot of it. You just
hit it down
say
the
it with
fairway. What was that I saw the other day about desktop underwriter was lacking records? Did you see that?
I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, look that up. Google News desktop underwriter lacking documentation. It's an interesting thing after we talked about. So, okay, breaking news. Here it is. Thank you for working through me with that, Rodney. I appreciate it. Only moments ago, less than an hour ago, the jury has sided with the home sellers in the commission trial. For anybody that doesn't know, it's called the Sitzer-Burnett trial. And they brought a lawsuit against a bunch of big, heavy hitters. Let me look who it was. NAR included Anywhere, which is a conglomerate that owns like Better Homes and just Sotheby's. They own that. Keller Williams, NAR, Home Services of America. I don't even know. I don't know who that is. But anyway, these turned into a class action suit, and they sued these guys, meaning National Association of Realtors and all the rest that I'm stumbling through because I don't have a list of them in front of me. Maybe we could Google that. they came back and sided with the sellers. So all of these guys, and they awarded full damages of nearly 1.8 billion. That's a B, $1.8 billion. The trial lasted 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, $1.8 billion.
Yeah. And this is going to be sending shockwaves, although I'm going to state this again, and I'll repeat this as we finish up the show. This is big news, but there's no practical effect yet. It's going to make a lot of noise. But I'm going to say this, if you're in the process, fear not. Nothing that you're in is going to change. However, there's going to be more conversations now about sellers going, what do we actually have to pay for a commission? What's this I read about commission? Because the rules have already changed. One of the things, here's a couple, anyway, I'll get to it. One of the things was this lawsuit brought the idea that there was collusion between everybody, forcing it up to 6%. I can tell you I'm in the business, and all that ever happened was that's what we always agreed on. And I didn't always get that number. I didn't, but that's what the sellers and I would agree on. That's where that came from. But nobody ever forced it to me. There was no quotas, nothing like that. But from the seller's side of the world, they saw that as a collusive thing, that they're being forced to pay that. Especially, and this thought, I've never thought about this, and I've been doing this coming up on 19 years, which surprises a lot of people because how young I look. I know. Come on.
I was fixing to say, is just blowing up the comments. It was like, did you see that? 19 years? I can't believe that.
Here's something I never thought of. One of the things that they were coming at, the plaintiffs were coming at these guys with, was this. The seller in the past was paying the buyer's agent who was hired to negotiate against the seller.
Yes.
I've never, in all my years, I always looked at it, I separated that cleanly, where my job as a buyer agent was to protect my buyer,
right? Period.
And if that meant get the price down, good. If that meant getting more repairs done, good. The goal was to get it for the price that they want, the quality they asked for, and silky smooth, meaning going through closing without any hiccups. That was my job. Yeah. That's the way I saw it. Now, from the seller side, makes total sense what I just said.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a huge debate that was brought up. Basically, this whole thing is about sellers. Are they or are they not responsible for the money, for the commissions to be paid to the buyer's agent for somebody bringing them a buyer?
Right. And the rules used to insist. The rules, right. I'm just going to interject. The MLS rules used to insist that there was a co-brokerage amount included. And they've already capitulated on that, said, well, we can make it zero. Go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is like, right now, the sellers, it's acceptable. It's a common practice for the seller to pay the fee for the buyer's representation. So they pay, let's say it's 6% on a regular contract. So the seller is agreeing to pay the listing agent 3% to sell the property, and they're agreeing to pay whichever buyer's agent brings somebody to the table, they're going to pay that 3% as well. What they're saying now is the seller is no longer responsible for this buyer fee. Man. So now this whole thing, in my opinion, was put together in 1412 whenever they started selling real estate and making things easier.
It came across with the Mayflower.
Yes. So forever that's been this way. And I'm just, I'm like, I get it. I get what they're saying, but I don't get how we're going to move forward. That's what I don't get. It's like, now you go to a listing, Andy. You go to a listing whenever they come up with however we're supposed to act going forward from this lawsuit.
Right.
And you say, okay, well, I'm going to list your house. That fee is 3%. But now are you going to have a conversation and saying, or do you want to pay somebody? Or do you just say, hey, if you don't pay anybody, you're probably not going to have anybody looking at the house? I mean,
and that's what I'm trying to, bear with me a second.
And while you're looking at, and then the other thing is that I thought was crazy about this 3-hour jury deliberation, 3 hours. I mean, they didn't even have lunch. I mean, it was like an open and shut case for 3 hours. If they get them out in 3 hours, just think they probably only talked about it for 30 minutes, and then they had to wait to get everybody back together. I mean, that's
fast.
Yes. And then 1.8, it's like $600 million an hour at that rate. So, I mean, it's wild that took them that little time to make that decision. But I guess it's just like, I get it, but it worked. You know what I'm saying? The system worked.
And that's what, and that's where I was trying to, where was that? The unintended consequences. And that's what we've been talking about. Here was another one that just, now this, I don't know if the word is imply or infer. We'll get to that later. Remember we were talking about this situation and the unintended consequences of VA buyers. Because as a VA buyer, you can't, I don't know what the rules are specifically. You remember I've sent that paragraph to you, I bet 100 times. Mm-hmm. They can't pay that. There's things that VAs.
Right. There's some fees that they can't pay.
I guess those are called non-allowables, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
And it says the VA buyer broker would not be able to get paid if the seller offers no compensation. But doesn't the fact that was going on that way, doesn't that infer that government approved of the current process? If that's how buyer brokers were getting paid and VAs were absolutely blocked from paying that, which moving forward, if there's going to be a buyer broker to protect the client, I'm starting to get sweaty. If there's going to be somebody to get protecting the client, VAs, they're not going to be able to afford it. They're coming in for 100% loan.
Right. And then what you're saying is VAs, they're saying VA is not, the veteran borrower is not eligible to pay the buyer representation fee? Correct. Okay. Yeah. And that's not too far-fetched from how the VA runs. VA is extremely cautious when anybody is trying to get their hands in a veteran's pocket.
They should be. And I appreciate that.
Hey, I'll tell you what, if it's one thing over 20 years of doing VA loans, anytime we call the veteran VA for assistance on guidance or whatever, it is universally their thing to do. What they feel like is that their motto is they're going to do what's best for the veteran.
Yeah.
Almost exclusively. And it's always been like that. It's very cool that, like, we know when we call there, they're going to try to do the best they can for what's best for the borrower. And, I mean, that's what we want as well. So it lines up good with us.
Well, and as a personal testimony, not for me personally, but as a businessman, through the years, as you and I have done VA stuff together, I'm always able to tell, again, sounds like a promo. It's not. It's just where my head's at, that for anybody at VA, when they talk to Rodney, they're going to talk to a person that really loves to help those vets, period, And they've put and I think that the government has put you in a good position to be able to do that.
Yes, VA. It's a great loan. It's a great loan for for our veterans. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
really good loan. It's good all the way around. It's got some protection against VA with their funding fee, and it allows people to have mistakes and it not affect future veterans. And it's a really good system. It's a
But
really good
think
system.
that but think this through now. With the VA, with that situation coming along now, it's going to, as a matter of fact, I need to keep my eye on that specifically because whatever the response is from the government, that's going to tip their hand on what they feel is fair or proper for the consumer. I mean,
Well,
because they're
yeah.
not going to let their VAs go out unprotected.
Right. No, no, I think and honestly, this could come and go. This decision could come and go as fast as the jury deliberation. I'm not positive that every real estate agent in the world, they're on top of this. When they go to their sellers, they're going to be like, hey, you don't have to pay that buyer's fee anymore. But I don't know how you're going to sell your house without it. Like, what are the ramifications if you don't put it in there against everybody else who is, or, even if it's half and half? So I think it's going to have to be like a public decision, outcry to say, I'm not paying this or some crazy, but they're not going to, I just don't see how it's going to work,
One of the things that they were fighting against in this case was the ability to sort by commissions on like Zillow or MLS. Being able, that one function to be able to click sort by the commission. Because some states are going to make it where if you're an agent and you see that there's zero, I don't know how this would work, but they're saying if you don't want to show it, you don't have to. I mean, if there's $0 and they're in the bar, it's going to change what sellers get.
Yeah, I just don't see. I don't see how. I mean, I don't see you now. It forces every single person to do a buyer's agreement up front, and then explain, hey, if they don't pay, how am I going to get paid? Like, it's a terrible situation. It's a terrible. Who wants to have that conversation? It's like.
And that buyer's agency agreement always existed, and we have to have one. We're required. But what it used to cover, I say used to, I don't know what that means, but what it covered really when you would have a conversation with the buyer that said, if you want to look at a house that the seller doesn't have a cooperated broker fee on there, which is what we're talking about, and that's like a for sale by owner would be a really good example, then you, the buyer, owe me that commission. Yeah. Now, when you tell them that up front and you have a buyer's agency agreement, which means you've contracted to work with me for X amount of months, universally, they'll say, let's not go to that one. They ain't going,
Right. Which, it's, I don't know, it's,
tells you everything.
Now you're putting, to me, you could be putting real estate commissions almost like an inducement to purchase. Like, okay, well, now everybody's going the opposite way. I really want to sell my house, but I'm going to put 4%. So now when you sort it, I come up at the very top.
Yeah.
Now you're looking,
somebody's going to come up with the idea of giving them gift cards or something. Watch. People start.
You kidding? Yeah, that's already going on. I'm saying
we're just getting started on workarounds on this kind of stuff. But the man,
it's now I have heard there was a kind of like not a trial run, but like Washington State had already done this. and they said it was a much to do about nothing. Basically, I don't know if it went this far, or I don't know how it was said, but the article was like, you know, it's pretty much status quo, that the people didn't have to list that they didn't have to pay it anymore, but they were paying it.
You know, and
Like
maybe
it went through without any, you know, so this could be like the biggest news that never.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. I have to sit and stew in that for a second.
But yeah, he said Washington State's just rocking and rolling just like it was the whole time. And
that was one of the states.
I don't know how much correlation exactly, like if this lawsuit was the same as theirs, but or whatever started their thing. But yeah, that's the article said it was like went off without a hitch.
Well, and that's the state I also am aware of that they did institute that. And again, I just don't know what the fundamentals of it. But if the commission rate is 0, you don't have to go and show it. And I don't actually understand how they do that, but that was one of the states that they're talking. They're pretty progressive in that kind of way. So let's think this through a second. That was really an excellent point. At work, I don't know about the $1.8 billion. That's going to hurt somebody. But let's think this through. Now that the cat's out of the bag, I'm going to say everything's on the table. It's on the up and up. When you're dealing with the seller, you can say, you absolutely do not have to pay a commission. I can tell you that there's probably not going to be anybody coming, but we can try it and see if that isn't what happens. You know?
Right. Yes.
And then so when people do see the light and that they see that it's more difficult when you're not enticing somebody essentially from the other side, it wouldn't be enticement, but people are going to make decisions with eyes wide open. I'm just thinking this through as I'm talking. And so it'll be better when you think about it.
Well, you know, one of the discussions on that topic also was that you know, the concept of steering, whereby our agents might avoid homes with lower commission rates. You know, but obviously there's no what'd they say? There was just no evidence to support that because it's not been going on. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it was just like, well, you can say that that's what's going to happen, but they really just kind of swept it under the rug, saying, well, you know, there's no evidence to support what might happen. But, you know, I think a big thing in that article is, you know, technology has made it to where I think there was a survey I seen somewhere that people find the majority of their homes on the internet. And,
Like 88,
and then
92%.
yeah. And so whether they're saying that's the individual finding it or the agent finding it or combining both of those numbers, I guess that's why the sellers are so up in arms about, well, why am I paying it if it's just, you know, hey, they found my house on the internet or whatever. But I'm anxious to see how it turns out, because it's it could go bad. And then again, like if it's like Washington or Washington State, that you could go off and be like, what'd y'all do a podcast about this for?
Yeah,
You know?
it was a nothing thing. I think that in the end, and there's a comment that Angie made that I want to pull up here too. But in the end, for those of us that know what it's like to go through the home buying process, home selling process, it's a little like that sausage getting made thing. For people that have enjoyed sausage and they sit down with breakfast and have that, they have no idea of what actually goes into making that. They just don't. And if they did, they'd probably stop eating it. You know, I mean, it's one of those things. In terms of real estate, people it boils down to two things that they remember: an offer coming in and closing day. All the bloody stuff that happens in the middle, the negotiations and the no sleep and the people that are difficult to deal with and stressed. That all goes out the window. It's gone, completely forgotten. I found it on Zillow and we closed. It was, how could you be easier than that? And they forget.
Yeah, they forget. They forget that. Yeah, I mean, it's. I'll just tell you, whenever we get a for sale by owner, whenever we're doing one, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work.
Just to keep
Our
it alive.
Yeah, our agents in this market do such a great job with. Yeah, I mean, keeping it together. I mean, and it's just when I deal with for sale by owner, nobody ever has a document. They have no clue what and then they start. Well, I didn't know you meant this, and I didn't. I mean, they're dealing with it themselves. It's awful. So, and some are fine, but for the most part, if we see a for sale by owner, it's like, and
Yeah.
we know ahead of time that we're going to have to really spend some time with the
Babysitting.
buyer and the seller.
Going to be babysitting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the last thing I can say about that is that when it comes to all this stuff, that a good agent for a seller can easily negotiate your commission, whatever that amount is, can easily negotiate that back in your favor. Easily. I mean, so
yes,
that's
the crazy part. It's if you're not in the business, I could see where you think that just listen. I mean, there's a time when you're putting these things, even if you're putting this thing, all you need to do is get on your HOA website and list your house for sale, and it's going to sell. And you say you go do that without an agent. Well, the agent's the one that's going to take the 25 offers and say, okay, submit your best and final by Sunday at 2:00, and then weed through 50 offers and get you 50,000 over list. Where for sale by owner would have probably taken 5 or 10,000 less because a guy went around his house with a flashlight and said, "Oh, I'm gonna have to fix everything."
Look at that mold.
I mean, I see it happen all the time when you try to save money like that. You outfox yourself a lot of times.
Yeah, and yet, based on what I was telling you, that one of the prongs that the suit was going after, which I understand, is that I'm paying you dozens of thousands of dollars to beat me out of a price. I could understand that waking me up in the middle of the night, if I didn't see the bigger picture. Here's what Angie says, and I think this is interesting. I think if the agent says you should pay buyer's fees to bring in interested parties that open up a new can of worms. Do you?
She's saying, I think if the agent asked to pay buyer fees, what was that question? If the
agent says that you should pay buyer fees to bring in interested parties, that open up a whole new can of worms. I have to think about that. As a professional, here's the way I would phrase that. You don't have to, but let's see what happens. I mean, we can, just like it is with people that have what I call a hot market hangover, when they are convinced that their house is worth more than it is because it was hot not so long ago. I'm more than willing to say, and the way I do it is, I'm happy. Let's try that. Let's just, you want to do 50,000 over what I think it's worth? It's no harm, no foul, costs us nothing. We can try it, but if it doesn't work, then we know what we need to do, right?
Yeah.
The answer is we need to lower the price.
But pricing it right, I'm a firm believer if you price it right, that, you're end up going to come out better. If you, instead of pricing it too high, lowering it, getting any kind of negative stigmatization on it, be like, why was it listed earlier? Why did y'all reduce it? What's going on? And then you all of a sudden got a house in a market that's selling or low inventory. Now you got a house. Well, why isn't it selling?
Oh yeah. And all of a sudden
person that comes to the house is like, why is it not selling? Instead of like, it just hit the market at a really good price. Like, there's two totally different things. Way to approach that. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of overlisting and trying to come in.
But you do have to give people the option to try it just so they can see, just so they can see.
There's no way you're ever going to avoid it because people think,
Can we just try?
Everybody's attached to their own stuff.
Yeah.
More.
But that being said, what this is that whole can of worms, the way I see it. Now, I didn't even think, wow, holy mackerel, this is really a good thought, Ange and Rodney. This is really a good thought. Now, with the commission variable in there, you could have it priced right, but if there's no commission, what if nobody comes partially because of that? Be it right, wrong, or indifferent.
Oh, you're going to, yeah. I mean, I don't, under no circumstance, I mean, knowing this rule right now, okay, and let's say that I had a $1 million house for sale. Under no circumstance, I don't care what was just released, would I be trying to not to be the lowest or no pay for a buyer's agent. I don't understand. They're not going to, I mean, it's human nature. Everybody needs to be paid for their job, right?
Yeah.
Why on earth would I expect somebody to bring somebody to my house if I have zero in commissions for that list for the buyer's agent?
But they're going to, it's just, I guess to put a bow on that, because we're just about out of time, I guess from my side to put a bow on it, and you said this early on, this could be the biggest thing to happen that never created any problems.
Could,
how did
yes,
you say that? How did you say that? Biggest thing that happened that never changed anything.
Yeah.
But I'll bet you. What? Go ahead.
I bet common sense may overtake this one. And since it's worked so well, the real estate market has worked so well for America for a long time. We'll see how it goes.
So if you're paying seller's commission, you'd be better off selling cheaper to pay less commission. Do you mean buyers? So if you're paying seller's commission, you'd be better off selling cheaper to pay less on commission. Well, in the end, it's going to head us into a whole other theoretical thing that I believe that home prices took into account, like Rodney always says, people factor that stuff in. Up till now, the buyer's commission has been factored into the price of the home. Well, if that turns into a variable, all bets are off. Is the house worth all of a sudden 3% less than it was yesterday? I don't know.
Yeah, I just, it's anytime somebody thinks there's a savings, like, they turn that into, just, how it is.
Yeah.
Well, if I don't use this agent, I'll get 3% off the house, which never happens,
Right.
So yeah, we're going to see how this one turns out, but it's going to be wild to see how it does. Cause there's going to be some people that don't see the value in paying a buyer's agent, but they also don't understand that money is the number one reason people don't buy houses. So having to come up with more of it just means that their pool of people wanting to buy that house is less.
And their pool of people able to buy is less. And if it's VA, that's really out, Right. I mean, exactly. I guess the way we are actually in the sausage making process currently. We're in that grinding, putting it in the, yeah, it's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. I just don't see people bringing people to that house if they're not going to get paid. They know it's going to pose a problem. They probably already talked to their buyers like, hey, don't show me anything I have to pay, $10,000 out of my pocket because I don't have it.
on top of closing costs, down payment. So now they ain't even going to get to look at some of these houses, maybe. But so we'll see how it turns out. I mean, who knows?
We'll
but
it's
interesting.
But I tell you what, the word, I mean, this will be interesting. It's going to shake things up. You know, Rodney, I realized that I just saw it blink off the screen. We forgot to do Rodney's rates. Can you sum up Rodney's rates in one sentence?
Yes, actually, I'll pull it back up. Let's see here. Well, they are actually, one sentence. They're trying to improve a little bit. We're actually seeing a little bit of the bounce off the bottom, so to speak, and trying to see a little bit of improvement. But they're still pretty high for today.
I can pull that up if you want.
No, we're good.
Or we'll just do it for next week. Okay, good. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Hey, we can skip the rate section until we get back in the 6s or 7s if you want to. So
done. Okay, well, that'll be a big day. Rodney, thank you for your. Every week, I just so grateful for the time I get to spend with you. Angie, thank you. Welcome home. Philip, Wendy, you guys are the best. I just love all you guys. So glad that you're here. I'll have to, Angie, I'll remember your question. I'll try to answer that next week. I've got to.
And I want to jump in on, I like Phillips. He's exactly right here. Pictured at closing. Here's 3 pages now that's going to saying you understand the seller's commission statement. And I'm probably going to have to send it in some kind of document and have them sign it too. Goodness gracious! So,
like
you're
3
right
weeks before.
Man.
Listen, have fun, everybody. I appreciate you being here this Tuesday. We'll talk to you next week. See you, Rodney.
See ya.
Bye.